Welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini, determined to make people aware and appreciate the place where he was born and raised. J. Michael Matthews, a.k.a. Dr. Mick, takes a deep dive into Hot Springs, Arkansas in his book, The Valley of Vapors and Vice, a glimpse into the history of the glitz and glamour of Hot Springs, 1920 to 1978. Welcome, Michael. Let's talk about your happy place.
I love it here. I grew up in Little Rock, but we spent our beginning when I was about 4. My family spent the weekends in Hot Springs. That's 40 miles away. And so I've been familiar with Hot Springs for a long time. And it's a lovely place. It's a well-kept little secret. And we're hoping that we get it out of the realm of being well kept with this series. You know, I'm writing 3 books, not just one. And the first book is The Valley, and then I'm going to write, and that goes from 1920 to 1978, the wild and woolly, crazy days of Hot Springs. And now I'm halfway through writing the prequel to that, which is 1820-ish to 1920. And then after I finish that, I'm writing another that will be from 1978 to present day.
When did you start on this adventure writing about Hot Springs?
While I was still, I practiced cosmetic and reconstructive dental surgery for, 30 some odd years. And I have a master's in marketing and an almost master's in journalism. I used to write an article for the Dallas paper. And so I kind of have that in my background. And then Hot Springs is such an interesting area. It's called by a lot of people, it's called the most sinful little city in the country. And people that have read the book say this is like Yellowstone on steroids, because it's very exciting. It's very true. The book is from my experiences to people I know that grew up here and their families. And so all the information that's in the book is true and quite verifiable. But I started this while I was still practicing, and I just couldn't give the book the attention it needed to finish it. So I finally told my wife one evening at dinner, I said, I'm going to retire from dentistry and devote my time to vapors. And she said, okay. Wow. And I did. And it's more than meeting my expectations. And I think the prequel is even better, and maybe that's the way it is. The prequel, the second book I'm writing, which is really book number 1, is more exciting than the first, and I think probably better written. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how well it receives. I have some interest by people that think it's worthy of considering a series either on TV or somewhere, so we'll see.
People really took notice of the Ozarks after that series, Ozark.
That's true. They did.
I mean, that was crazy. That was a crazy, scary, horrible tale. But they really did a great job of showing you the Ozarks. And did people start coming out there in droves after that series, or has that always been a very...
They were already coming out here in droves, just not very many people knew about what's here and what's around Hot Springs, and never mind the natural beauty of it. But if you go all the way back to, and that's what I'm doing in the first book, I'm going all the way back to where it started, even with the Indians coming here, and that's where the Valley of Vapors name came from. The Indians came here because of the water that comes out of the ground that's been, they say, I don't know how they measured it, I guess with a dipstick, and they say that water's been in the ground for 4,000 years.
Wow.
And who knows? I don't know how they know that. But that started, and then the explorers came when the Louisiana Purchase happened. And then when that happened, the settlers started coming, and that kind of kick-started Hot Springs, the settlers. And then along came all the adult stuff, the hotels, the casinos, the brothels, the gambling and horse racing. And one of the oldest, very pristine thoroughbred tracks is right here in Hot Springs. And so that brings a lot of people. And never mind the lakes that are here. That gets all the people that like to hunt and fish and swim and do things around water. So Hot Springs is a neat little area, but it's been very well, I guess we would say, protected. Not a lot of people realize what it is until they get here and see it.
Right, right.
But probably the big booster was Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters hooked up with Oni Madden and the gangsters and decided that maybe there was some future here to make investment. And so they invested, the Teamsters did, in all the things that are going on, especially the casinos. And at that point, Las Vegas was trying to get started. So they reached out to the Teamsters and said, hey, we'd like to have some of that money. And they talked to Oni Madden and the people here that were running Hot Springs, and they said, no, we don't think so. We'll keep the money here. And that started the feud between Las Vegas and Hot Springs.
How about that?
Oh, yeah. There's two things I haven't touched on that will really light the fire, and that is the assassination of Kennedy is tied to Hot Springs, is tied to Oni Madden and that whole group, as is the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. The Kennedys were after Madden for years. If you remember, old man Kennedy made his money. He made his money from the alcohol. He would bring it in, and then Oni Madden would distribute it. He lived in New York for a number of years until he killed about 5 people, and they put him in the prison. And then they let him out with the promise that if they let him out of prison, he would never return to New York. And he didn't. He came here and he married a lady that was just gorgeous. She was the daughter of the postmaster, and he lived very happily the rest of his life here in Hot Springs. The note that's interesting with the Kennedy thing is all the people that ran the syndicate in Hot Springs were in Dallas the day Kennedy was assassinated. And when the FBI interviewed the people, they interviewed the lady that gave Jack Ruby, the guy that killed Oswald.
Right.
They interviewed him because he had a manicure the day before he killed Oswald. And when they got through, now this, you have to remember the timing of this. This is people weren't using credit cards and they were paying with cash. And they said, so when it was done, who paid for the manicure? And he said, Oni Madden. Oni Madden had gone to Dallas, was in Dallas that day, and actually paid for Jack Ruby's, it was the manicure pedicure. So there's all sorts of little things in the book like that. There's little colloquial things that tie into the story of what was going on in Hot Springs, but then there's things that encompass the rest of the United States that tie back to it.
Do you get out and talk about your book?
You know, I've been very busy writing the second book, but I'm going to present it to a group of Hot Springs ladies, and that's my next step, is to get more visible and go out and talk to groups that want to know about the Valley. I traveled and lectured for about 15 years all over the country and up into Canada, down the Caribbean, into Europe about dental things. So I have some speaking experience, and yeah, and I loved it. As you can tell, I don't have any problem
You
talking.
don't, and you're so interesting. Could you reach out to some of those contacts and take your book on the road?
Oh, sure. Now I'm getting a lot of people that call and say, "Oh, we'd love for you to come and do our book fair at Berkeley." And I said, "Oh, well, that's really nice." But then they said, "And all you've got, and it's just $7,000." And I'm thinking,
No.
why am I paying you to promote my book when I can promote it by myself?
You know what? That happens. I think there's vultures that,
Oh, there are. I've even had a call. Had a call from England, from
yeah.
London, saying, come to London. And I said, no, I just don't have time. And I don't.
But I mean, you don't have to pay anybody. I'm sure right in your community, people know who you are. You could go to the local library. I bet there's book clubs. You could go anywhere to talk about the history of the Ozarks and use your own contacts and do not spend any money. You should go to the tourism board for the Ozarks.
The guy that runs that board is one of my best friends. I'm very visible here, as you can imagine.
I can imagine.
So between, I've had people fly in to have cosmetic dentistry work done. I've been here. Well, I've been in Hot Springs most of my life. I left to practice in North Dallas for 20 years. But the rest of the time, I've been in this area, starting at 4 years old when I used to run through the lobby of the Arlington Hotel, which is a very visible property here and has quite a history in itself.
Wow.
So,
You are J. Michael Matthews, a.k.a. Dr. Mick, author of The Valley of Vapors and Vice, a glimpse into the history of the glitz and glamour of Hot Springs, 1920 to 1978. Thanks so much.
okay, let me tell you, if you go to YouTube
Okay.
and you pull up the name of the book, it'll pull up a thing that I scripted, and there's some pictures with it of people that are very well known in this area and all over the world, literally, that know about Hot Springs. And so there's a real good Kickstarter for you about the Valley of Vapors and Vice.
Great.
Okay. And
I think you're going to do just fine, J. Michael Matthews. Dr. Mick.
well, Dr. Mick is wanting to have all 3 books written and then have somebody buy the rights and do whatever they want to with it. So that's the goal here. And I already have a couple of people that are knocking on the door. I'm just not ready. I'm not to that point yet. I appreciate your call.
You got it. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Okay, babe. Thank you.
A retired computer engineer and physicist, Michaux Raine was guided by science for most of his working life. It was time for a creative outlet, and now here you are with your first published book. It's entitled Backwoods, and I'm curious about your name. It's French, correct?
It is. It's, yes, it's Appalachian French. I always say that my name should be pronounced Michaux, but it's suffered from 300 years of Appalachia bastardization. So
that'll do it.
Michaux became Misha, y'all, kind of thing. So
I love that. How long you been writing?
not long. I was in the very last year or so of my career. I traveled a lot, but I was working 3 days a week in another city. And so I had a lot of hotel room plane time. And what I always tell people is I've always been a big reader. I just read anything and everything because I've spent a lot of time on airplanes over the last 40 years. And I'm one of these people that if I start reading a book, I have to finish it no matter how bad it is. Mm-hmm. And so I was in a hotel reading a novel, and that I knew was horrible, that I knew I was not going to like. But I finished it, and sure enough, I got to the end of it and said, I knew that was going to be this bad. And the little devil and angel popped up on my shoulder, one saying, you could write something better than this. And the other one saying, oh, no, you couldn't. You're not a professional writer, blah, blah, blah. Well, then the devil won. And next thing I knew, I started just tapping out a story. And I had 1,000 pages in like 2.5 months. So I spent the next kind of year and a half winnowing it down to a respectable 300 pages and trying to keep the same story and not cut it to the bone. So I guess, a long story, I've probably been writing 5 years.
And it started with the book we're talking about today, The Backwoods?
Yes.
Okay. Do you reach into your Appalachian roots?
Oh, the book is based not even loosely, very much on where I grew up in southwestern Virginia. A lot of the places and characters and language in the book is from where I grew up, and it was, a very, very rural, very mountainous, very isolated area where I grew up. So yes, the book is, anyone that reads the book that's from Southwest Virginia will recognize the people, the places, the patois, the language, everything.
All right. So tell me about this heart-pounding tale of murder and vengeance and the violent underbelly of Appalachia.
Oh, gosh. I know. Oh, God. Oh, every time I read that, I almost throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Why?
No, it's good. I've read it so often, though. It's kind of like, I don't know. I no matter, it's kind of like, there's like, you ever hear those interviews with actors who say they can't stand to see themselves on film?
Yes.
I'm becoming one of those people that doesn't like to read my own book again. But, well, it's interesting because I didn't have the story planned out. I made the story up as I went along. So I would write a chapter and the story would kind of wander one way. And then I would get to the next chapter and say, I wonder if I should go left or right. And the central premise that I came up with was, what happens when a bad thing happens to a really good person? And in this case, the good person was the central character who'd gone through, the loss of a wife, the loss of his father. He had kind of hit rock bottom in a lot of ways, but he was still a really good guy. And one drunken night, he ran across the wrong guy, and they got into a fight, and he killed him in self-defense. And it turns out that this person that he killed is the son of a kind of a moonshine and drug lord who's a really, really, really bad person. So the book kind of focuses on how do we get this main character out of this predicament before he gets killed, before this kind of mountain man who runs this shadowy army of thugs up in the hills comes down from the hills to exact revenge. So that's kind of the premise of the book, and it kind of takes off from there.
Okay, so Mason Cartwright is our good guy.
Yes, sorry.
And then,
Ezra Clements is the really bad guy, and he's got a couple of I will call them kind of DNA insufficient thugs that tag along with him.
One of them being his best friend, the sheriff, right?
Yeah, well, the sheriff and Mason grew up together and were best friends. And so he enlists the help of the sheriff. But Ezra has a gentleman named Doughty James, who is probably, in my mind, when I imagine him, was about 6'5", 6'6", probably about 300 pounds, bald, and just, mentally and intellectually not all there, and just follows any order, no matter how horrible, that Ezra gives him, whether it be kill this person or, do this crime. And so there's some the battle lines get drawn pretty quickly, I guess.
Do you wrap it up all in one book?
I do. Yeah. It was interesting though. I spoke at not too long ago, I spoke at a book club, and it was about 15 women there, and every one of them said that I should write a sequel, which was Mason and the widowed wife of the sheriff. The sheriff gets killed in the book. A love story between those two. And I kind of said, I don't think I would be good at writing a love story, but I don't know. So they wanted a sequel based on the emerging love affair between those two.
Nice. So you're out talking about this book.
I have been a little bit, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say that's one thing that confounds every author I talk to is, how do I get this book out there? So what are you doing?
That's when I went into this and I knew that I was going to go the Fulton Books / self-publishing route.
Okay.
I knew that the part that would trip me up, the place where I would not really be very good at all, would be the self-promotion and the marketing. And truthfully, I didn't write this or publish this to make money. I mean, yes, that would have been nice if it had been a bestseller and all that, but that was quite honestly not my goal. And so, as much as I've gotten to the point now where I'm not someone who's going to be on Facebook or on social media every day pushing this book. Friends and family have bought it.
Well, what about the book club? How did that happen?
A good friend of mine is head of it, and she called me to do it, and I did another one at my mother's retirement home.
Well,
but it was, there's fun. You always, even if you're not naturally a self-promoter, everyone likes to talk about themselves. So, those things are kind of fun, and they are good for the ego, if nothing else.
You've also got a very good story here.
Thank you. Well, our family motto on the coat of arms is never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. So,
that's exactly right. I agree. 100%.
I come from a long line of storytellers. So I come by it honestly.
So you're not sure if you're going to keep writing?
I will keep writing because I just like doing it. I may end up with 10 or 12, unpublished novels sitting on my computer at some day.
Okay. All right.
But
was it a good experience? Are you glad you did it?
Oh God, yes. I love it. I can tick that off as, hey, I'm a published author now, and yes, absolutely. Loved it. Loved doing it. Loved seeing the book come to life. That was like the first day I got the cover art and stuff. It was just like, holy cow, this is so neat.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
But, so.
Michaux Raine, author of The Backwoods. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
When some time came up between jobs, Shelly Moulton decided to put on paper the children's stories that she had been writing in her head for years. Today we're talking about Winter's Kiss. So this was like a little experiment for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. In January last year, I submitted my first little story. Yeah, and then we just went from there.
What's your inspiration?
Well, I can't really pinpoint the inspiration exactly. My whole life, well, I have a large family. I have 6 children, and
you have 6 children. You gave birth to 6 children.
I did. I gave birth to 6 children, and we always liked to make up silly rhymes and silly songs to help them remember things, and just about our day, what we did during the day, we'd make up a little silly song about it so they'd remember and have these cute little memories and the little songs to sing. So I've always been looking for little things throughout my day that I could write a little song about, or a little poem about, or a little book about. So it's kind of been a lifelong thing for me. But
How many books altogether?
well, this is the first of 4 others that I have ready to go. Um, Winter's Kiss, I asked them, I have 4 books, well, 5 books about the seasons. And I asked them which story they'd like me to submit. And they said, well, better, let's do your winter story first. And so I submitted my winter story, and we started with Winter's Kiss.
Tell me about Winter's Kiss.
So Winter's Kiss is a little story about a little boy who's finally old enough to go out and have some adventures and some fun experiences in the wintertime. He starts off just looking at the snow, and it's told through the eyes of the mother, but seen through the perspective of the child. So she's telling her little child, look out the window. It snowed, and guess what we get to do? You'll see all of these fun things that you get to experience. We can go sledding or make snow angels or snowmen or ice skate on the pond. So it's all about having his first real adventure out in the snow. And um, the beauty of the season of winter. It's not a holiday book, it's a season book. The book is titled Winter's Kiss, and it's not just about how much you can love the winter, but it's about how winter loves you back and watches out for you too. And so the title Winter's Kiss is a little bit intriguing because it's like what is a winter's kiss? What does winter's kiss mean? And the little boy finds out as he's playing in the snow that he notices a tingle on his cheeks, nose, and toes. And that's a kind kiss from winter saying goodbye for the day. That you must now go inside to finish your play. And so it's about getting to spend some time outside in the cold, but knowing when it's time to go in, because winter tells you she needs you to go in so you can come back out another time and play.
That is so
Thank you.
adorable. Are your kids all grown up now?
All of my children are grown. My oldest is 38. My youngest is 28, but I have 9 grandchildren,
Oh,
and they don't all live in Colorado. So I wanted to be able to spend some lovely sharing time with them as well. And so I wanted them to have little stories and little songs to grow up with too, just like their parents did. And so that's one of the reasons.
I'd love to hear you read this book. Your voice is adorable.
Thank you. Thank you.
You sound like a kid yourself.
I know. I would love to read my storybook. That would just be a dream to have me read.
Well, people have to know about it.
Yes, yeah, they do. I know they do have local author nights where you can read and present your stories. So as soon as I get a little time away from work, I really want to do that. And I do have friends that are teachers that want me to come and read the story in the schools.
So your library has first time author nights?
They do. They have I don't know if it's a night or a day, but they do. I do have some information about meet the authors.
That would be so fun for you.
Yes, it would be really fun.
Okay. And you're going to publish all 4 of these books?
I am. Yes, I'm really looking forward to starting another one. And the next one will be Autumn Crisp. I think is the one that I'll do next about the fall. That's actually, yeah, that's the first one that I wrote actually. Yeah.
Have you enjoyed this process?
Oh my goodness, it's been beyond bliss for me. I love writing little stories. It's so joyful.
That's great. Good for you.
Thank you.
You are Shelly Moulton, author of Winter's Kiss. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
The healing power of writing is illustrated in the stories of our next couple of writers. Kae Watson suffered a trauma in college that not only changed her life, but led her into the world of poetry. Welcome, Kae. The name of your book, The Whispers of My Woes.
So actually, I started poetry just because of therapy. I had a therapist after my younger cousin died from suicide. I had a therapist tell me to write to him. And it just kind of came from there, just like writing journals and then writing stories and then writing poetry. It just flowed out. So I've been writing poetry for like maybe 4 years now.
It was your cousin?
Yes, he was 13, enrolled in an accident. And he also had a younger brother. And they had lost their mom when they were growing up. So it was a lot of grief all at once. It wasn't just grieving him, it was grieving his mom and just life and the situations that we had already been through on top of him. And so it was just hard. And I kind of just shut down completely. I was in college, it was my sophomore year. And so my academic advisors, my professors, my friends, everybody was like, you're gonna have to do something, otherwise you're just gonna waste away. And so that's when I did therapy, and she was like, you should write to him, you should talk to him. And so I did, and poetry came from that, and his story, my story, our story came from that.
So it sends you into a spiral.
It does. It really does. Because it's just the questions of why. It's the questions of just life in general. Like, how can life be so cruel?
And you found writing to be therapeutic.
Yeah, therapeutic. And it just felt like a way that I could connect to the ones I've lost or to things that don't get the emotional attention that they deserve or the mental attention in today's times that they deserve.
Did you find it difficult to start writing poetry, having, never done it before?
No, actually. It kind of just flowed easily. I found it more difficult to write the journals. And so instead of writing journals and trying to be specific on what I was feeling, it kind of just came out through poetry and rhyme and just sort of like a rhythm and a cadence.
What made you decide? I mean, it's one thing to write the poems to work through your grief, but why did you decide to publish?
I was going around in college and reading them at little events and just to my friends, and they were all like, you should publish. Like other people need to hear this. And I was like, okay, it's worth a try. And so I reached out to a publishing company, and it all kind of went through and got a bunch of yeses. So I thought it was meant to be. And that's how The Whispers of My Woes came about. It was just sort of meant to be, it felt like.
Did they have open mic nights?
Yeah, they had open mic nights. Sometimes it was just like community events. I was in a lot of clubs and groups. So sometimes it was there. Sometimes I was reading them in support groups, grief counseling groups. And it just helped a lot of people. And so because it was helping people and people were kind of taking it, or some people were asking me like, hey, can you send me this one? Like, I want to read it. I want to have it. And so I just published. It just all came kind of very fast.
Wow. How did you feel reading your innermost thoughts?
Terrified. It was very, very terrifying. I needed someone to hear me or someone to see me. So that's what kind of got me through it, but terrifying. It took me a while. Sometimes I would turn around and read it and just not face the audience, and I would just apologize. Especially in grief counseling, it was hard to get through some of the poems with just the heavy emotion that they brought on. So sometimes I would just be bawling my eyes out and still reading. But it was authentic, and I needed to be heard, and I needed to say it. So that's kind of how I just kept at speaking and sharing and giving the words to the world.
I mean, I just give you a lot of credit for having the strength instead of leaving the stage or leaving the group or leaving the situation that you were in to just turn around. That's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very big in my growth and in my writing, and like I think it kind of helped me be more comfortable with writing and more comfortable with the poetry and the poems and the message that I was trying to give. And I didn't really write to share, but because sharing helped me and it seemed to help other people, I did. Like I just kept sharing and kept writing. And so speaking and sharing just gave me that confidence to keep writing and keep telling my story through the poems.
That says a lot about you. And also, I think it gives other people strength because I talk to people who write poetry, and a lot of times poets are working through something traumatic that happened in their lives and they're afraid to go out and read. And I feel bad, you know? So I think the fact that you were able to overcome that is also very helpful to the people that you are sharing your poetry with. So why don't you share one with us here on the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable?
Yes. Okay, so I have one. Okay, this one is titled Echoes of Grief. No forewarning came of grief's cruel might. Loved ones departed, leaving an aching fright. I bore farewells before, but this one is sting. A pain so deep, a sorrow that does cling. Is it age? Is it the maturing heart's ache that amplifies loss or emotions break? Your absence, a wound that refuses to mend. A part of me lost, a heartache to transcend. Once I felt you near, a presence so dear, but now a fog obscures what once was clear. How am I to journey on so incomplete without the heartbeat of our shared hearts beat? My heart song was ours, a harmonious strain, but now it's a solo, an echo of pain. No longer two hearts that rhythmically blend, just my heartbeat left, a tune without end. My life mirrors the soul's ache and despair, chasing distant goals, a path tenuous and rare. But success remains elusive, just out of view. For who I was, without you, it no longer holds true. Yet strength is found in knowing you persist, existing in what's present, future, and missed. Through the passage of time, your essence remains, a constant, unchanging in joys and pains. This journey through sorrow, a symphony untold, in the cadence of tears and the stories of old. In echoes of grief, a melody unforeseen, I find solace in the thought that you've never been. For in every moment, in all that will be, your spirit resides, an eternal decree. Though the notes may alter, the melody will go on, a tribute to the love that forever lives on.
Oh,
thank you.
Wow. Do you read that one a lot?
I do.
That really wraps it all up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Are you still able to get out and read your stuff?
This interview was like my spark back. I was like, I'm gonna go back into it.
Okay. So. This is the beginning. Well, you know you can do it.
Yes.
I have a feeling, you'll find a way.
Yes.
All right. You are Kae Watson, author of The Whispers of My Woes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Ken Lugo joined the Army when he was 19. Among his many duties, training soldiers in Iraq during the Gulf War, an experience that left him with PTSD. And the name of your book, Mission Arizona Sweep. Ken, first of all, thanks so much for your service. When were you in Iraq?
2006 to 2007. At the time, I was a drill sergeant in South Carolina. They basically had said, they need sergeants or instructors to go train the Iraqi army. And if we didn't go now, then, it was like a rotation. So if we didn't go now, you eventually be going, later. So I just went ahead and raised my hand. I said, let's just get this over with. So I went. So I trained the Iraqi army. Supposedly, that's what it said on paper, but it was more than that. What
did it turn out to be?
Well, on paper, the government has a way of saying things, but then once you get over there, it's a totally different thing because we were on the assumption that we were going to be training the Iraqi army recruits, how to fire their weapons and read maps. I was a weapons instructor, so I was able to, to teach them how to shoot. But it turned out that when we went on patrols, and we weren't supposed to do any patrolling, but we eventually would go out on patrols with the Iraqis around 3 a.m. and, kick in doors while supposedly the bad guys were sleeping. So, I was the gunner, the guy on top of the vehicle with the machine gun. And, we were living on an Iraqi base. So we didn't have the luxury like other soldiers that, they were on the base, they were secure, and they were getting 3 hot meals a day. Us, we were more like in a remote area. We were being fired upon, by mortars frequently, or small on fires, while we're in our beds, sleeping. And a lot of times it turned out that the Iraqi army, by day, they were smiling in your face and, shaking your hand. And then by night, they're shooting at you,
The people you were training?
Well, people that we entrusted and we were training. But at night, when they go home, they were passing on our location and our information to people, giving them the intel, telling them how many soldiers, American soldiers. And we were just a team of 11 surrounded around 200 Iraqi soldiers.
Oh, geez.
So the pressure was on. And, honestly, I slept, with a gun, on my chest every night, not knowing who was going to open the door, in the middle of the night. So the stress was high, and quite frankly, I was, scared. We were only there 12, 13 months, but as time went on, more and more events were occurring that it got to the point that even just not only me, but the other guys on our team, we're all losing it. We're seeing death and destruction on a constant basis. Then, one other soldier in my team, turned on me and he pointed a rifle at me, and I thought he was going to kill me. And it was all due to stress. We were turning on each other.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that was like from the get-go, once we got to this remote area.
So your book is about dealing with your PTSD.
Right. My book, when I got out of the Army, I had to be constantly moving because that's how the Army is. And even as a drill sergeant, you're on your feet, you're running, you're moving. And so I needed something to do to keep myself occupied or my mind occupied. So I started driving semis, and I went to a semi school, and, I had my CDL already through the Army, but the PTSD, brought a lot of anxiety. And it brought things like, if you saw something wrong or you saw something, you had to correct it, because if you didn't do it, it'll just eat you up from the inside and then you'd be restless. So dealing with the PTSD, it was always one thing or another. And when I was driving trucks, the Army had stationed me in Arizona for about 3 years. So when I was driving through with the semi with the Arizona desert, there was a lot of trash, things out of place. A lot of times when you saw things out of place, your radar went up because I was a gunner on top, of a machine gun with my head exposed. And, so it was my job. If I saw something weird or out of place, I had to make sure, it was safe to continue on.
So how did you deal with this? I've driven through Arizona, and I can't believe you're driving through the desert on one road and there's like bathtubs and washers and weird crap that has been discarded in the middle of the desert. So I'm sure that made your radar go up. But does this book, help people deal with PTSD, or are you just pretty much telling your story?
Well, it was pretty much telling my story, but I had, the Army, and I had several stints inpatient medical facility because of the PTSD, and I wasn't alone. So it was one of those things that, it was just the anxiety of, when I'm driving through Arizona, and it just took me back to Iraq. At nighttime, I would see cactuses out, in the dark, thinking they were the enemy.
Oh, geez.
Tumbleweed rolled by in front of me while I was driving, and me slamming on the brakes, thinking that would be some type of explosion or a bomb.
Oh, boy.
And, like I said, it was just, nerve wracking. And the reason why I wrote the book, it was inpatient hospital. They, my therapist said, wow, you got some stories, because they give everyone journals to jot down what's on your mind, and then we can talk about it in sessions.
Right.
And my therapist said, wow, you did experience some things. And then they said, wow, you got enough stuff here to write a book. And I said, you know what? That was, why not? So Mission Arizona is actually my third book, but all my books are related to my experiences, and hoping that other veterans that pick up my book can relate. I know they can relate, but at least they can say, well, listen, I wasn't the only one there. I wasn't the only one feeling this. I know what this guy is going through. I go through the same thing. So that's the motivation behind it,
Do people know that you've written this book?
I had copies, and I took them to the VA, and I would stuff my books like in a VA library, or on a tabletop, in the waiting rooms where people would have to sit down, and hopefully somebody will pick it up. And like I said, none of it with the intent of being popular or just for someone to say, oh,
No, it's not even about being popular. It's about people knowing you wrote the book.
Right.
I mean, you want to help people. And so that's what author signings are all about. It's not about just, let me promote myself. I wrote a book. You have something to offer other veterans that might be experiencing the same thing. So are you able to go to these VA places and do a book signing?
On a regular basis, I have therapy, group therapy with other veterans at vet centers, and everybody shares their story, and so they all know my story, and so I gave a couple copies to my therapist, and she enjoyed it, and so she's trying to promote maybe the VA could maybe buy a few copies to hand out to other veterans that are going through the same thing as I am.
Okay, well, you're on the road. Are you going to keep writing?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have one now that's being edited about my police experiences, about my growing up in New York City, wanted to become a cop, but it's called Riding the Blue Line, because, I was witnessing a lot of things like the Rodney King situation. I was seeing a lot of corruption. My book is actually crossing the line and not exposing people by names, but exposing the stories.
Good for you. All this writing must be very good for you, very therapeutic.
It is. It is. It's working. Yeah, it is,
You are Ken Lugo, author
Yes.
of Mission Arizona Sweep. Thanks so much for talking to me.
And thank you for calling me.
Pamela Murray was listening to a couple of podcasters who wrote books and thought to herself, I can do that. Flipping Nightmare is the name of your book, Pamela, and I'm curious, what did listening to these podcasters make you realize about yourself?
I'm really good at storytelling, just things just coming to my mind and running with it. So I was like, well, their books are so-so.
Oh, they weren't that great?
No. So I was like, I could probably do that. Maybe better.
What were the podcasts about?
True crime.
Okay. And you came up with Flippin' Nightmare.
I did.
So tell me about Solomon Carter.
Well, he is looking for something. I'm not sure what he found was what he was looking for, but he's always been searching and.
Well, his backstory is pretty frightening. He was left in the woods at age 4.
Yes.
Is there any truth to that anywhere in your life?
Whenever I was a little kid, we had neighbors who we met because their small son was in our woods. And I have this fascination with cults. So I was like, I could combine that story with, a cult like story.
So he was found by these wonderful people and he had this awesome childhood and he grew up and he got married. Things were going pretty well for Solomon. And then what happened?
And then he kind of had this itch that he just he wanted to scratch it, but he didn't want to do it nearby because, his wife was like, oh, well, we could just do it down the road. And he was like, nah, let's make it bigger and, move to a whole new state that we don't know about and see if we can really do this thing.
You're talking about his dream of flipping houses?
Yes.
And he decided to pursue this dream after he got an email from his dead mother?
Yes.
How did that happen?
She's not dead, but he doesn't know that. And so she wanted to get him back to where he came from. And so she thought that this would be the easiest way because who can refuse, to flip a house that your dead mom is like, hey, come out here and flip this house.
So he goes out to Oregon.
Yes.
And he buys the house without telling his wife.
Exactly. And without seeing the house.
Oh.
So, yeah.
It wasn't his dead mother's house, right?
No, actually, it's the house that he was born in. But he doesn't know that when he buys it.
So what happens?
They get there and, Solomon, he's all excited. They find this creepy little village on the back of their property. They find an equally creepy church-like thing. And, he's super excited. His wife and his dad are both kind of like, maybe this isn't what we signed up for. But Bethany's like, well, I'm just going to support him because, we're all about adventure and let's see where this goes. And so then Bethany finds a journal in a hidden room, and his dad finds a journal in an office, and he goes down into the basement of the church and finds a skeleton along with a journal. And so him and his wife are reading the journals, and they're both by what he doesn't know is his mom and his dad. And he's like hanging out with the skeleton in the basement of the church and reading the journal. And then Bethany, she's just hanging out in this secret room where him and his mom and his twin brother were kept whenever he was little, but he doesn't remember any of that.
He just remembers a wonderful childhood. He doesn't remember being locked in a room with his brother.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Exactly. And, of course, they meet the preacher of the town who's creepy. And Bethany starts thinking things are really wrong whenever, she goes back to the church because she thought that this dude on the cross was alive, and it turns out he was alive. And then when they go back, the preacher has taken the guy off the cross and replaced it with a plastic Jesus. So, yeah.
So where does the cult come in?
So the cult comes in because they So the people who are members of the town, they broke off from the Roanoke colony before the Roanoke colony disappeared, and they traveled across the United States and found themselves in Oregon. And so the pastor is the leader. His family has always kind of been in charge. When the people got there, they're sick and they're dying, and so he convinces them that there's something that lives in the dark at night, and so that's what's been killing everybody, and they need to sacrifice someone. Obviously, it's a small town, so you can't always sacrifice your members in your town. So, but there is a family who tends to have twins, and so one of the twins has to be sacrificed at like 7 years old. So that's why Solomon was left in the woods, because his mom didn't want him to be sacrificed.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
But the pastors convinced the whole town. So like the whole town's like, we got to be in our house by 5 o'clock. We can't go back outside until morning, because they're convinced that there's something out there in the dark that's going to get them. But really, it's just, the pastor being greedy and wanting to control everyone. And there's not actually something out there. It's just him being a jerk.
Does the book end here?
No, they're actually going to go to Louisiana and flip another house on an island. And the book ended with, Bethany was like, is that a person in the window of the house that they're supposed to be going to flip? And Solomon's like, I don't know, is it?
So they keep on flipping. How many books do you think you're going to write in this series?
My plan is just 3. So it'll be the one with Louisiana, and then I'm going to go back and write sort of how the whole cult came together and how they went from, the Roanoke colony and how everything kind of got started.
Okay. All right. Do people know about this book?
Hopefully. I have a lot of friends who know, who keep telling their friends, who hopefully keep telling their friends. I want to do author signings. I haven't yet. And I know that Fulton is putting together a Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Pamela Murray, author of Flippin' Nightmare. Thanks for talking to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Our next author's pen name is Vecenti. It's his grandfather's name, who was a chief and council delegate from Eastern Navajo in Crown Point, New Mexico. Welcome, Vecenti. The name of your book is Residential, and it's mostly about your work with young Native American children. And you share some really interesting background about your relatives, especially your grandfather.
He's just like a senator. This is tribe. He's a council delegate. So he was born to rodeos also, too. He had a lot of stocks, sheep, horses, cows, and whatnot. And that's my mother. That's my late mother's father. And he had many wives. I don't know how many wives he has, but he had many wives, though.
Okay.
My late father, Stanley Manlito Sr., was like a medicine man. Also, my late grandma was a medicine woman also, too. And I learned a lot of these sacred stuff about traditional from all 3 of them. I kind of grasped it when I was a young man, maybe 10 years old. So most of that book is from my point of view, working with young adults. See, I worked at Wingate High School, which is about 30, maybe 20 miles south of Gallup, New Mexico. and I work with young people, aging from freshman to senior. I would say aging from 15 to 20 years old. And most of these kids are off the reservation for there's at that time there was only boarding school was the only one that really existed, not public school. Now they got all kind of schools on the Navajo Nation reservation now.
Okay.
They try to teach them these negative stuff to them and how to do negative stuff. But there was no, the only positive was probably from the good parent, not the parents that knew who they came from. And they try to encourage them and teach them. And they ate from them, hurt. And my grandma, she used to collect herbs up in the mountains. A lot of these herbs are only collected in the mountains. They're not really among the around nearby. The only nearby is like sagebrush. Sagebrush is good for cold, and the Navajo tea too. When you had surgery or something, that's what's good for. Okay. We have all type of herbs at that one time or another. Just like the pharmacy has.
Okay, so your book is about you working with young adults who had family issues.
Yes, ma'am.
And they're in a boarding school on the Navajo reservation, and you talk about your work with these students.
They come and talk to me of their pain and their aching. What's wrong with them? They say, I have a bad headache, which I can't get rid of. I have a stomach pain, which I can't get rid of. And my family wants me to be a skinwalker. You know what a skinwalker is?
No.
A skinwalker is like a werewolf. And they sing inside the house, and the young man or the young lady will become a werewolf, and they'll go out, hunt, try to destroy people who are kind of rich, and put negative stuff on them. And what happened is they collect hair and all these other stuff, or from the grave, the bones, and they put together, and they put it underneath a rock. Underneath the rock, where the snake pit it might be, and all where the coyote is very sacred in our story, in our history. The coyote, the bear too. They try to hide them, and then that's when I come in. I try to encourage them. Did you try this? Did you do this? You need to do that. It's between you and I. You can't tell anybody. So that's between you and me. And I won't tell anybody what's wrong. And, that's how I help them.
Well, you say a lot of these students have disciplinary issues.
Ma'am, I work at Wingate for over 30 years, and I work at Winter High School, which is another Native American school. I haven't seen one. I barely see my kids, my high school kids that I have worked with. I haven't seen anybody yet.
You haven't seen them?
Two or three.
You haven't seen them since they graduated?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because, that there was a lot of things going around. She's doing this, he's doing that. I wonder what's wrong with him. And didn't realize, they also work with the students that are handicapped also too, like autistic. They have a medicine. They have herb medicine for that.
Are these the herbs you were talking about earlier?
Yes.
Do people know you wrote this book?
Yes and no. I try not to. I try not to reveal myself that I know that. And if I do that, they might think I'm one of these negative person. I don't want them people to think of me as a negative. I want people to know me as a good young person, intelligent person.
Okay.
And it took me 1 day or 2 years. It took me years to write that, and then I guess you notice that I have used a manual typewriter to do that. There was no computer at that time. There was, but I really didn't pay attention to it. So I kind of wrote it with a manual typewriter, the old typewriter.
Where do you go from here with this book?
Well, I hope to sell it, and then they have the question. Also, ma'am, I'm working on another one, ma'am. I'm taking my time on it.
Okay.
It's going to be called after the corporal punishment, because I have learned a lot of stuff about boarding school back in 1900, I would say 1920, up to about 1970, because my father went through that. As a matter of fact, they put it in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. He went AWOL from there and came back on a train all the way back to Winslow, Arizona, and did something, him and his friend. And he also ran away from White River, Arizona, which is about 300 miles from where we live, and he made it back also too. So, and my mother went to a boarding school also too.
That's some family history you got there, Vecenti. Thank you for sharing. The name of your book, Residential.
Okay, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.